Welcome to Marketing Strategies. And today we have a special guest, a repeat guest. But before I get into that, if you're used to listening to the podcast, definitely go check us out on YouTube because we're actually on screen today too. So you can listen and watch and follow along. So my guest today is Dr. Erica Abraham of Axon Health. And if you have been listening for a time, you'll know that we talked in episode 23 in August of 2021. So it's a little over a year now. And so I thought it would be really cool to have her come back on because she is a new business owner. And we talked at the end of year one. And now it's the end of year two. And I wanted to kind of check in, see how things are going. I know how things are going, but I'm not going to spoil it for everybody. So thanks so much for coming on, Dr. Erica.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. The podcast has grown. You have grown. It's kind of like we're growing up together. So it's kind of
Yeah.
cool. So before we dive into this is what you were doing then, and this is what you're going to do now, or thinking about, or what happened along the way, tell everybody again a little bit about your business, what you guys do, all that good stuff.
So my husband and I are both chiropractors. We own Axon Health out of Colorado Springs. It's a it was just a mobile chiropractic business and it has since expanded. Um, so we'll get into that, I'm sure. But we're mobile chiropractors here in the Springs. We started in September 2020, so right in the middle of the pandemic. And yeah, I was on here just before our 1 year anniversary, and now we just surpassed 2 years. So it's been lots of fun the last 2 years.
Yeah, and it's been really fun to watch you grow. So I am also a customer or a patient of Dr. Erica and Dr. Nick. Um, so it is. It's been very rewarding for me to kind of watch you guys over the last year and talk about things and everything. Um, and so for those that are listening all over the country, when we say we're in the Springs, we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Um, just to give a frame of reference.
Mm.
So I wrote down a list of the stuff we talked about a year ago. And I want to kind of go through it again a little bit and see what's changed. So the first thing on my list is that we met through BNI. We're both BNI members. Longtime listeners know that I think BNI is really cool. So tell me what has changed with BNI for you.
So I think when we last spoke, I had just recently switched to a different BNI group. Um and so I'm in a different BNI group, but BNI in general is still very, very helpful. It's still one of the biggest ways that we get business for ourselves. So I still highly recommend it pretty much for any business at any point that you're in. If you are looking for referrals in some shape or form, it's still a really great way to get business, I mean, honestly, for anybody. And I don't see our business backing out of BNI anytime soon or if ever. So I do think that it's very, very, very helpful for businesses, especially if you're looking for the biggest bang for your buck when you're first starting out. With regards to marketing dollars, the biggest bang for your buck I have been able to find has been BNI for sure.
Absolutely. And I always recommend to a lot of new businesses, network. But if you want to seriously network and get business, you join a BNI because the others are great. They're nice. They're fun. You get to meet other people. But it's one of the few organizations that like we actively go and look for business for each other, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm in a new chapter too. So,
Mhm.
moving around in BNI is kind of par for the course. You just gotta find what fits for you. Now, you're in a chapter, and then Nick is in another chapter, right? So talk
Yes.
about that a little bit.
I mean, it's great because we get access to other people's circles and spheres and stuff and networks. So I do think that it's a great strategy. If he gets a referral, then typically they'll go straight to him. If I get a referral, they typically go straight to me unless they request female or male, then we can at least, what they can come see me or they can go see him. Um So it is nice to be able to expand. I'm sorry, the part of the reason I'm in here is because of our dog. Can you hear my dog barking in the background? It's I apologize.
They want to be on the podcast too. They have something to say.
Our one dog has been very, very, snooty the last few days, not with not getting her way. So the door is closed right now, she's not getting her way because she wants to be in here. Um, but yeah, being in different BNI groups has been really helpful for expanding our network even more, um, and building up each of our own clientele. So it's been yeah, I recommend it if you're able to do it and you can be in multiple BNI groups. I think it's a great idea.
I think so too. Now, you each have different specialties. We covered this before, but I just kind of want to round back to that. So let's say someone um Nick gets a referral, but it's really a neurological thing.
Right.
He's going to pass it over to you, but it still stays inside the family.
So he can. I actually have not been practicing that
Okay.
since I spoke to you. Not as much anyways. I was at the beginning, but then we had a friend move to town who owns a clinic and he specializes in that. And he does it much more frequently than I do. So if there's typically a case like that, I actually refer it out to him, which is nice because again, with giver's gain mentality, if we're talking about BNI, there is that reciprocal relationship between us. So if somebody's looking for a chiropractor for spine rehab and that kind of stuff, he sends it to us and there's a nice relationship there. So I'm actually not doing it quite as much. If it's basic stuff, I can do it, but if somebody needs a little bit more intervention, then I usually send it to him. So,
Nice.
yeah, that is an update, I suppose.
See, it is an
Yeah.
update, and that's part of that growing and shifting change. At least it's more rapid in the first 5 years of a business because you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," but then I met this person, and then it's a better quality of care for your patient, so you decide to make a change on how you're doing things, which I think is incredible. You gotta be really flexible those first 5 years because it's like, you're bobbing and weaving everywhere.
Right. Yeah. So and that kind of rehab is a little bit more in time intensive. And so I'm already restricted on time just because I have to drive everywhere. So from a time perspective, it was more feasible to also send them to him. So yeah, again, you got to be adaptable in those first few years trying to figure out where you want to spend your time and your money and what works best for you. So it is a learning process.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about where you are today, thought process wise, how it's going with social media, because I know that was another um, big outreach for you.
Mhm. So social media wise, I don't know, I don't remember when I discovered Canva, but I discovered Canva and Canva has been incredible. So highly recommend looking into Canva if you're looking
Yeah,
for,
couldn't be the Income and Marketing Podcast Canva episode, but
Canva has been super helpful, especially, I mean, I learned in high school how to use things like Adobe programs and everything, but Canva makes things so much easier because I can just do it on my phone. So Canva has been great, but then we also, we had professional photos done. So our Instagram and our social media in general just looks more professional. Actually, next week I don't know if people in Colorado Springs know this, but you can rent out a studio in the library for free. And you can rent out professional equipment for free as long as you have a library card. So actually next week we're going to the library, we're renting out the studio, and we're going to be working on redoing and refreshing some of our YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. So social media, refining it, making sure it looks professional, that has definitely happened in the last year. So um it just comes with time. We're no longer taking pictures with I mean, we do sometimes take pictures with our iPhones, but sometimes the quality on those is not the greatest. So getting professional photos done was awesome. And now we have a whole bank of photos that we can pull from and post for content. So,
awesome. I love that you're upping your video game because everything I'm seeing is that everything is going towards video, and Google with YouTube is making a huge push to compete with TikTok, with shorts, with video. You've seen your feeds changing. Make sure they probably sent you an email saying they're assigning you a handle. grab that
Mhm.
as soon as it gets put in there
Okay, good to know.
because what that does is it gives you a named
A
URL
new feed?
in YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be
So it's not this
youtube.com
long.
backslash at Axon Health.
Okay, so
And
it's
then
not this
that at
long URL that nobody.
yeah, the alphabet soup, you get to get rid
Right.
of that. So it brands you, and then it allows people to have conversations with you because they can say, "Hey, at Axon Health, what about this?" And then you can have
Right.
they're trying to create a little community in there. So, big things happening in the world of YouTube over the next 6 months, which is pretty
No.
exciting. So, grab your handle as soon as they give it to you. Should be in the
Awesome.
next week or 2.
Awesome.
Um, but I love that. I love that you're upping that, because I think your videos are great.
Thank you.
Um Oh, the other thing they're doing, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, is they're doing, health certifications for
Okay.
YouTube. So look for that and check it out because you can get certified as a health professional, which gives you a designation on YouTube. So you're not like just me going, "Hey, this exercise is great,"
Right.
and I'm a marketing professional, not a healthcare professional.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
Awesome.
you guys will definitely wanna do that.
Good to know.
Yeah. Always, always looking at that stuff. Um, so now let's move on and talk about your articles, your newsletters, because those were kind of like really ramping up when we got to that year one mark.
Right. So I would say we've been working on just the habit of email marketing. Lately, we've been working on trying to make sure that that is staying consistent. I'm planning them out instead of just that day that I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to send this out. Let's just send anything out. So I'm planning them out. Last I spoke to you, obviously it was not in this format, but
Yeah.
I was discussing how in 2023 we want to really hone in on how we're marketing outside of things like BNI and word of mouth. Um, so that will include drip email campaigns and sales funnels and all those sorts of things. So that's coming in 2023. I've just recently started diving into all of the information from people like Russell Brunson. So working on that. Yeah, so it's coming along. It's just kind of slow, but we're getting there. And I'm starting to finally find resources. And in your podcast too, I had texted you after I listened to your drip email campaign podcast. And I took notes and I was like, okay, we got to do this. And so part of it is part of what we're doing on our social media day that we're renting out in the library um, will be content for those drip campaigns. So,
Awesome. I think
yeah.
that's great.
Mhm.
It really, really is. And what's great about how all of this works together is, you know, someone someone may see you online, they may get your email, someone may forward it to them. That happens quite a bit within the BNI network. I ask people a lot to forward a lot of my emails. Then they see your logo, they see the video, and then someone writes the referral, and boom, it's like this instant, like, oh, I know who you are.
Mhm.
And then it makes it easier to book the appointment, get the sale, do the things. So it kind of all works together. So I'm really glad to see that you're ramping that up because even if they're like, oh, not right now, they can get into the drip. And 6 months from now, they're ready. So
Right.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation about outsourcing. Um, where are you at with that? Are you guys like still doing everything yourself?
My gosh, no, thank God.
Ah,
We we in I think it was the end of May, early June, we hired an assistant. So she's virtual, so she does a lot of the scheduling. She does all of our billing. She has taken a lot of the things that I just really was struggling to find time for, but were obviously still important to the functioning of the business. She's answering the phone. All of the phone calls get forwarded to her phone. So it's been very, very helpful to get some of my time back. And it's kind of crazy because once we hired her, it took about 2 or 3 weeks for my brain to catch up with how exhausted I was and how exhausted I had been since we started the business. And so I remember I was actually sitting, ironically, in a BNI meeting. I'm sitting there listening to everybody talk, but I have no idea what they're saying. I cannot concentrate on anything. And so I'm just like staring at them, trying to figure out the words that are coming out of their mouth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so burnt out. So I'm sitting in my BNI meeting, texting her saying, "I need you to find 5 days in a row on my calendar. If you have to move people around, I really don't care. Just find 5 days because I need to sleep or just rest because I was so busy that I didn't even realize how burnt out I was. I was just constantly doing things, like, didn't have time for burnout, and then we hired her. I had some mental space, and it took a couple of weeks to realize just how bad it had gotten. So we're very grateful for her and the fact that we are outsourcing some of our stuff now, um, because I don't think that I would be the business wouldn't be where it is right now, at least with my schedule and the number of patients that I'm seeing, it wouldn't be where it is right now if it weren't for her. So, very, very grateful to be outsourcing.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, just for that fact. You can't even realize that you're burning out. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of businesses fail after in that very first year or right afterwards. It's not
Mhm.
sustainable. Like moving at that pace, it's you can't do it indefinitely.
No.
You need help, you need downtime. I get it. Some people are like, I work 80-hour weeks. I'm like, no, actually, you probably don't. You
I
just think you do.
still I still say I work probably 60 to 80 hours a week, I just do it differently, and
Yeah.
it's stuff that I don't find as draining. Um, so, I really enjoy the creativity side of the marketing and all of that kind of stuff, so I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but, I mean, the billing, the answering the phone, the scheduling, remembering to call people back. I mean, I was so burnt out that half the time I would forget, and then they had gone and found another chiropractor. Um, so all of those little things that they weren't taking up a ton of time. Like, she's virtual, she works maybe 5 hours a week, but it's stuff that
Yeah.
it's freeing up my mind, it's freeing up even that 5 hours, that's 5 hours that I can be treating patients and actually making money.
Right.
Oh, it's I still work a lot, I still work more than the regular 40-hour work week, but it's not as draining.
Yes. And the thing I want to emphasize there is like when you start outsourcing, you don't have to bring in people full time and have an office for them. There are ways to do it where you get to grow into the outsource. And I
Right.
think that's a really important point. I think a lot of people think like, oh, if I hire this person, I got to find 40 hours worth of work. Not in this day and age. People are more than happy to do a little bit of work for you, a little bit of work for someone else, and
Yep.
and kind of cobble all of that together with those virtual part-time services, which I think is important for people to understand. It's you don't
Right.
need 40 hours in order to outsource something.
And for her husband works out of state, and right as we were bringing her on, that's when he was starting to work out of state, and they weren't sure if she was gonna be able to stay. They've got 2 young kids, if they were gonna have to move their whole lives, out there with him or if they could stay, and I didn't know this when we were hiring her, but she said, even just with the little bit of of the additional income from the small amount of work that she's doing for us, she's able to they didn't have to move. They were able to stay here. Her kids were able to stay at the schools that they were going to,
Oh,
stay around their friends, and they didn't have to uproot their lives. So, I and it's not that it's taking a bunch of money. And again, in those 5 hours, I can make more than I need to pay her for the week. So, it's scary because you're like, "Well, I have to take money out of what I'm paying myself to pay this person," and it's like, well, you could also take that time that you're not getting paid any money and actually go and make money. Kind of
right.
a trade-off there. But it's benefiting her and her family as well. So, um, it was a very nice symbiotic relationship,
I
and
love it when
it's
that
only
works.
about 5 hours a week for
Oh,
her. So, between having kids and her husband being out of state, not being able to help with them, and it's helped her a lot.
well,
So,
that's great. Yeah, and that's the upside of being a business owner. You're not just affecting your customers' lives, but the people that work for you and work with you. You're helping better their lives too, which I think is that's just awesome.
mhm,
So let's kind of expand that a little bit. There's that outsourcing and then there's expansion, right? We talked about, n- what Axon meant and
mhm.
why it's not just chiropractic. So
Yeah.
tell us where that journey has gone for you.
So, at the beginning of September, we brought on a mobile massage therapist. So the goal has been to be a mobile multidisciplinary practice. And so we, at the end of last year, polled our patients and asked them if we were to bring on another provider, what type of provider would you want? And 80% of people said a mobile massage therapist. So we started the process of like, who do we want to hire? What are we looking for? All that kind of stuff. We started that earlier this year. And then brought her name is Maria, brought Maria on at the beginning of September. So she is new to the business. This is, we're November 1st now, so she's been with us for 2 whole months. Um, and she's slowly starting to build up her momentum and grow, and so it's been awesome starting to bring on different providers. We're hoping that in the new year we can bring on some mobile IV therapy. So yeah, we're trying to expand beyond just the chiropractic sphere into other areas.
That's cool. Maria's awesome, by the way. That reminds me, I've got to schedule another massage. Um, so thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Um, yeah, I remember when we first talked about it, you were like, "Oh, we have all these plans. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And I think you've done it relatively quickly, actually. Like, from a year of when we talked about it, it was forming in your head to pretty much a year later, you've got your first expansion. It's pretty impressive. It really is.
Yeah, we did hire a business coach, and I think if we hadn't have hired her, we would still be in the phase of talking about bringing on a mobile massage therapist. We were kind of afraid to take that leap. I think mostly because we didn't really know what we were doing with regards to the hiring process. I mean, we had hired the assistant, but this was like a whole other provider that was
Yeah,
gonna
this is people in
going into
front of
people's
your
home.
customers, it's
Yeah, exactly. So
I
we didn't really
know.
know what we were doing. So we were very grateful because she was able to guide us through that process of how to interview somebody and what we need to put in our job, our ad for the job. And so she was very, very helpful. And I'm very grateful for her for that because it held us accountable to actually pursuing that.
The
Um,
right coaches are amazing.
yeah, she was really great. Shout out to Kelly Eikenberry if anybody here in Colorado Springs is looking for a business coach. Um, so yeah, it has happened very quickly. I thought so when I made our 1-year anniversary post on Instagram, or sorry, 2-year anniversary post on Instagram, I said, "Oh, in the last 6 months, we've doubled our team by adding the assistant and the massage therapist." And then after I made that post, I went back, I was like, "Wait a second. I think it's been even shorter than that. I think it's been like 4 months since we since we did that."
Ah,
Um, so yeah, we've expanded a decent amount, our team in the last not even 6 months, I guess 6 months.
right. Well, it goes from ideation to actual, boots on the ground. So
Mhm.
in your mind, it's probably 6 months, but to everybody else, it's been a couple of months.
Right.
But it's all positive change. And I think a lot of that is probably due to the coach. You're like, oh, I got someone telling me that here's how we do it. And sometimes that's all you need is someone
And
just
I'm
to say,
spending the
no, it's
money.
not a
What better
crazy
be worth
idea.
it.
It's good.
Yeah, so if I'm spending the money on it, it better be worth it. If I'm gonna be paying
Absolutely.
somebody to guide me through these things, I better do it because otherwise I might as well flush money down the drain.
Exactly. Well, and that's part of the motivator too. As an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, I'm spending this. I got to make it back. So I'm going to do the things.
Yep, exactly.
Now, one of the things we had talked about then, and I kind of know the journey of this, but it's not all roses and new people and happy things.
Mhm.
Um, there's stuff that happens. You're like, dang it, this isn't working out. So let's talk about you. You had talked about getting a van so that people could come into the van, get adjusted, and go back into their house.
Right.
How's that going?
It's not.
I think no, but that's okay because you're going to tell us why.
Yeah, so there's a few reasons. One is when we did start looking, the used car industry, as I'm sure many people are aware, was absolutely insane. And so it was difficult to get a brand new car, and you were paying way more than value for a used car. So I wasn't about to spend all of this money trying to get a van that was not worth the value that they wanted. So there was that. gas prices have skyrocketed, so that's part of it. But then I was also thinking too, and I don't even know if we discussed this last time that we met, but um, I think if we are to expand to something like having a mobile personal trainer, which is also on our list of things that we want to add at some point, where there's a lot of equipment, I think that that will be the most important to have some sort of a van or a trailer or something. Um, but I've also been reflecting on my process of how I treat people in the last year and the value of going into somebody's home and actually seeing how they live. It's not something that I realized when we first started the business, how much value that has, because I can see the interaction between people in the homes. If you come to me in a clinic, I rely on what you're saying to me to be accurate and true about what's going on in your house. I can see the tension. I've walked into homes where I'm like, "You and your husband just fought." I can tell. Or there's other stressors in the home, and so I see that and I feel it, and I can make recommendations for things when I see it like that. I can say, I know a great therapist. Maybe you should go talk to them. You also can't lie to me about the Cheetos that you have on your counter that you swore you're never going to eat again, or the smoking that you say that you don't do because it smells like cigarettes in here or something. Um,
Right.
so there's another aspect to care that would be almost missing if I didn't go into people's homes. Not every provider would necessarily need that. But as of right now, I do think that there is value in actually entering somebody's home from a care standpoint. So if I were to get the van, then I would be missing out on that. It would save me time because I wouldn't have to set up in people's homes. So there is that component that I have to also consider. So the van is not completely off the table yet, but
Yeah.
I'm also not completely sold on the idea, at least for the chiropractor. It is illegal for apparently for a massage therapist to actually have a van and do massages from a van. So she's not going to be getting one. But for somebody like a personal trainer, I definitely can see the value in that. I think we have to refine that idea a little bit more before we pursue it and make a financial decision that might impact us if we're not using it to the fullest advantage. Um, so it's still kind of in my mind, but I'm not 100% sold on the idea as of right now. It would be great for corporate deals though. So if I
Yeah.
roll up businesses and stuff, um, but I don't think that that side of our business has grown enough to warrant it right now. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not a no, but
and
it's
that's why I wanted to have the conversation, because sometimes we think of things and we're like, "Oh, this is great," but then it's just not lining up, and then a little time goes by and you're like, "Wait a minute, this isn't the idea I thought it was," or "It's not the right thing." And I'm glad I didn't pull the trigger, buy a van, and and then realize like, "Oh, maybe this isn't the direction I wanna go."
great.
So, it's part of that flexibility, which I
Mhm.
think is great, right? We gotta be flexible, and even though we say we're gonna do something, if it's not working out, we've gotta be able to pivot and go in a different direction.
Right.
So tell me what's in store for the rest of year 2?
For the rest of this year, um,
Or
I mean,
I get
hopefully I guess year 3, going into
yeah,
year
I
3.
was just I was like, "Wait a minute, year 2 just passed." No, year 3. The year coming up, the future.
I do want to add the mobile IV therapy, if we can add some other type of provider as well, I would really like to do that. I read a book called U Squared that my friend Garrett Goggins, who is a mindset coach here in the Springs as well, he had me read, and it's a very easy read, I highly recommend it for entrepreneurs as well. Basically, talking about the idea of aim, shoot no, sorry, what's that saying with the gun?
Ready,
Ready,
aim, fire.
shoot ready, aim, fire. Going ready, fire, aim, like pulling the trigger on something because you're not gonna know everything that you gotta do for the thing that you're trying to pull off. Um, so I'm trying to incorporate more of that idea of, starting before you're ready because being ready is kind of this fallacy that we tell ourselves all the time. Um, So if we bring on more than the IV therapy next year, I would be absolutely ecstatic if even if we're not ready fully in our minds to do it. Whether it's a mobile registered dietitian or the mobile personal trainer that I was talking about. Um, yeah, so we'll see. But the big goal is sales funnels and all that kinda
There
fun
you
marketing
go.
stuff.
And continuing to grow, of course, getting more
Yes, of course.
clients, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll have you back in another year and see how
Yeah,
that goes
sounds
if you're
good.
willing. We'll follow you through your first 5-year process.
Sounds good.
Um, so we're kind of like almost out of time. I know it's
I know.
like it just feels like it flew. Any additional thoughts you have on anything before we wrap this up?
Um, no, I'm just excited to see, we've done a lot in the last year, even just the last 6 months. I'm excited to see what happens in the next year with us, and it's always a learning and growing process, you're not gonna know everything starting out day 1 or even year 1 or even year 2, so it's a malleable process, and I'm just excited to see where our process goes. So,
I am too. I can't wait to see what happens for you in the next year. Thanks so much for being on, Dr. Erica. I
thank you
appreciate it.
for having me.
So, as usual, if you want to talk more about your marketing, you can go to inkama.com. That's INKYMA.com. Click on the marketing consultation button and schedule 45 minutes with me where you can talk about whatever you want to with marketing. Maybe talk about that YouTube thing, because obviously I'm watching it very closely. I can't wait to see what's happening there. If you have questions, definitely go down to the contact form, fill it out. I get back to all those emails. And I hope you found this episode inspirational for your business. If so, please consider sharing it with other business owners that you know so that we, as the small business community, can grow and thrive together. Thanks so much for listening, for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.